All right, we should be live on the UA Museum's YouTube channel and the Gorgas House Museum's Facebook page, and the Mildred Westervelt Warner Transportation Facebook page. We're just going to take a second and just verify that, making sure that everything is live and working like it should. Looks like we are live on the Gorgas House Museum Facebook page, and that is good to go. So if you're joining us from the Gorgas House Museum, welcome to the live stream. We'll be hanging out for a few seconds just to make sure everything is working properly. Looks like we're good on the Transportation Museum's page. And now I'm going to check YouTube before we get started. All right, so we are live on all of our platforms and everything is looking good. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started with today's discussion. Welcome to today's Museums from Your Home live stream presented by the University of Alabama Museums. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I am the communication specialist for UA Museums. And today we have a full house on the live stream. We've actually got some people waiting in the wings here. So right now, though, we've got Catherine Edge, director of the Mildred Westervelt Warner Transportation Museum, and Brandon Thompson, director of the Gorgas House Museum. And we've also got some students, some University of Alabama students who work at the Gorgas House Museum. So welcome everybody to the live stream this morning. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Glad to be back.
All right. Well, while we are broadcasting on Facebook and the UA Museum's YouTube channel, feel free to ask our panelists any questions that you might have and just drop them in the comment section. We'll be able to read them and pull them up on the stream. And remember, this is live, so anything can happen. So just hang in there with us in case Facebook has any issues or YouTube has any issues or, God forbid we have any issues because connectivity is a big issue right now. So just hang in with us and be patient just in case we do run into anything. But hopefully that will not happen and everything will go very smoothly. All right. Well, now that we've gotten all that business out of the way, Brandon, how should we get started into today's discussion?
All right, well, thanks. Well, today we're going to talk with students and museums, basically trying to talk about what museums and historic spaces mean to students, especially those that actively work and engage with them. And today we are joined by work studies and volunteer student docents who work and engage in the Gorgas House Museum. So generally, I'm just going to give everybody a quick introduction so you can all say hello. And then I'm going to call on each of you individually to tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, tell us what your major is, what year you are, and then also one thing interesting about yourself that maybe we haven't talked to one another about. What's interesting is that we have people who are on the stream now who have been at the Gorgas House for maybe a semester, a little bit more, and then some others who have been there for a year or more. And we'll talk about that too as we go. But I'm just going to go around the screen based on what I can see, asking everybody to introduce themselves. And we'll start with Adrian. If you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Adrian. So I'm an upcoming senior. I major in public health with a minor in public policy. And I've been with the Gorgas House for about almost 4 years now. So my entire college career.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is that you've been in the Gorgas House longer than I have, and you are not the only one. So yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more too. Tell us one interesting thing about yourself.
One interesting thing about me is that I'm a lifelong Girl Scout.
Oh, I didn't know that. Did anybody else know that?
No, I didn't know that.
I had no idea. No idea. Okay, I have some questions about that, but we'll talk about that off the screen. Okay. All right. Thanks, Adrian. All right. Moving on to Micheala. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. So my name is Micheala. I'm going to be a senior in the fall. I'm majoring in theater with a minor in creative media. And I have been at the Gorgas House for almost 4 years, just like Adrian. And a fun thing about me is that I play both the flute and the viola.
I didn't know that either. Well, this is gonna be a really fun stream for me because I'm gonna learn a lot about all of you. So yeah, this is gonna be a lot of real fun conversation. Well, yeah, thanks, Micheala. Once again, you have been at the museum longer than I have. You've seen a lot of people come in and out, and we'll touch on that a little bit more as we go on. So thanks, Micheala. Going to move on to Rachel. Rachel, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm a junior majoring in public relations. And I've been at the Gorgas House for 2 years. And a fun fact about me is that I went to art school.
Didn't know that. What art school did you go to?
School of Fine Arts in Birmingham.
I actually went to that high school with her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
we went to school together in high school.
Didn't
We were
know
both on the
that.
yearbook
Okay.
team.
Mhm.
I can see that. That does not surprise me. That I can definitely see. All right. Well, thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it. That's fun. I'm gonna bring all this back. I got to start taking notes. All right. And Morgan, Morgan, go ahead and tell us a little something about yourself.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I am currently a sophomore. My major is chemical engineering with a minor in history. I've been at Gorgas House for 1 semester, so pretty new still, but I've really enjoyed it. And one fun fact, I've been a museum member at the World War II Museum in New Orleans for 7 years now. So
Nice.
Wow. Okay. Cool. Very cool. Didn't know that. All right. Very nice. Awesome. All right. And lastly, but not least, moving on to Ivy. Ivy, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah. Hello, I'm Ivy. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. I am majoring in art history, and I've recently added on a major in New College, which just means that I've made my own major to fit my needs, but I haven't figured out a name for it yet. I started at the Gorgas House in the fall semester of this past year, so I'm pretty new as well. And then a fun fact about me is I have a scuba license, and I've gone scuba diving before.
Didn't know that.
And I got it for free because the program just had me teach the young kids once, or monitor the young kids, and so I didn't have to pay for it because I worked for free for 2 weeks.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, right?
Whatever it takes. That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Yeah, I've learned a lot about all of you in the first 5 minutes, and I'm going to talk to all of you about these things now. So yeah, that's pretty neat. That's a lot of fun. All right. Well, great. Thanks everybody for introducing yourself. I'm really looking forward to this next hour. So yeah, we're really going to focus on history and museums, but if we go off topic a little bit, that's fine too. But basically how it's going to work, we have a series of questions we're going to ask you guys, and because there's so many of us, I'm going to direct those questions at each individual, and then we'll kind of feed off from one another and go from there. So, starting right off, we'll go with Adrian, just because you're the first on my screen. So what brought you to work or volunteer in the museum system? And saying that you were looking for a work study position is totally fine, but what really brought you to work or volunteer at the Gorgas House or at museums in general?
So my story about coming to work at the Gorgas House is really similar to Michaela's story because we actually came to work at the same time. Basically what happened was our freshman year, before our freshman year even started, Micheala and I were both enrolled in this program at the university called Camp 1831, which if you haven't heard of Camp 1831 or if you're an incoming freshman, I would definitely advise for you to definitely check it out. It's basically a program that lets freshmen come into campus early and they get to learn about the campus traditions as well as the campus culture before school even starts. So one of the events at the end of Camp 1831 was that we were able to go and visit some different places on campus. And Micheala and me, we actually chose to take a tour at the Gorgas House Museum. I was really interested in history, and I think that's actually how we bonded since we were both in the camp together. So when we took a tour at the museum, I remember her actually being the one to bring up the idea of volunteering at the museum and asking about it. And I was like, I don't know if they'll even let us do that. I mean, we're students, but I went with her and she asked the current museum director at that time. And it turns out that students can actively work as volunteers in the museum. So since then, since before we even became freshmen, we were volunteers at the Gorgas House Museum.
That's great. You've touched on a couple of things right away we can talk about. Camp 1831 is this incoming student program. It's fantastic. We still give tours to those groups several times a year just to, introduce incoming students to campus climate and campus culture. And those programs are fantastic. And I didn't know both of you were in that. That's pretty neat. But yeah, I really enjoy meeting with those students and talking to them. And you also just touched on the idea of volunteering. I would recommend any student who's interested in history or museums or historic spaces, if you're interested in working these places, the first thing to do is to reach out and ask to volunteer. And not only does that immerse yourself in the culture, but it can also explore some of your own interest and kind of get some career building career building skills as well. So that's really neat. All right, thanks, Adrian. I appreciate that. I'm going to piggyback off that. I'm going to jump over to Micaela, asking you the same question. You know, what brought you to work or volunteer in the museum system? And I think I have a little bit of an idea now.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to expand on anything that Adrian said, please go for it.
Let's see. So when we were in Camp 1831, we had the decision of either going to the football museum or going to the Gorgas House. And we were among the small group that chose to go to the Gorgas House.
That's a good museum, though.
Yes.
It's a great museum.
So we were, since there wasn't a large group, we were really able to get sucked into the history of the house. And the idea sparked in my head, I want to volunteer here. And so I grabbed Adrian and was like, let's do this. So we spent the whole week before the semester started just studying the manual. We were quizzing each other. We got sticky notes. It was a ball.
Yeah, that's part of it, finding these places to engage on campus, and at the Gorgas House, we have this student manual or this docent manual that we all build off of, but it isn't this static old thing that you read once and it's all done. It's constantly changing because we all do our own individual research, and Miss Camilla gets on board. Camilla Canty, our an amazing researcher and volunteer who's also been there longer than I have, and knows more about the space than anybody, myself included. But yeah, I mean, that's part of it. It's kind of create meaning in the space, so that's fantastic. All right, thanks, Micaela. Rachel, going to jump over to you. What brought you to work at or volunteer in the museum system?
Well, I'm a really big reader. I'll read anything I get my hands on, and a while back I came across that they'd actually published some of the diaries that the Gorgas and the Gale family members had written. So I read both of those and got really interested in the family and just wanted to learn more. So I reached out and asked if I could volunteer, and I've just been really grateful ever since my freshman year that I've gotten to share those stories and that family with all of our visitors.
Well, thanks. I'm really the one who's grateful for all of y'all working in the space, because y'all really bring it to life. Because it means something collectively to all of us, but I think we all create our own individual meanings from it. And just talking to everybody briefly, we all come from these various backgrounds, we all have different majors, and we're all pursuing different things, but we all have our shared interest in these historic spaces. And whatever those meanings might happen to be, we're able to share those together. So it's a real privilege having everybody in the space. So no, thank you. That's fantastic to hear about. All right, Morgan, just going down counterclockwise on my screen. Can you tell us a little bit what brought you to work or volunteer in the museum system?
Yeah, so I've always kind of wanted to be like a tour guide, because I grew up around the old plantation houses Oak Alley and Nottoway, but in Louisiana you have to be 18, so I never got the opportunity. And so when I went to school in Alabama, I joined the museum club. I'm not sure the official name, but the club with all the museums, and they sent out an email being like, hey, if you want to volunteer at the Gorgas House, email Brandon Thompson. I was like, I want to do that. I've always wanted to do that. So I reached out, and then we met. I got the volunteer manual, and then I started giving tours and stuff. So
fantastic fun. Yeah, you're from Louisiana. There's some fantastic and wonderful history down there. We have some parallels that way as well. Yeah, and then the club you're talking about is our UA Museum Student Membership Group, and it's basically a way for students to engage and interact with the different museum systems and some of our adjacent fields, including the collections department, research collections department, and even discovering Alabama, and really provide all these different skill building exercises and event building exercises. We're still building up that program, and we're actively getting larger and larger. So yeah, I encourage anybody to check that out, and we'll include links to all that information for any students who are interested in what that looks like. Just look for it in our descriptions on our videos. You'll be able to see a little bit more about that organization. All right, thanks, Morgan. Appreciate it. All right, Ivy, it's up to you. What brought you to work or volunteer in the museum system?
Yes. Okay. So I wanted to okay, let me go back a little bit. Like I said, I'm an art history major, and I want to work in museums. I want to work in art museums. So originally I was looking around campus for art resources that I could potentially work with. And there were galleries in Tuscaloosa, and there was a gallery on campus, but they had all kind of finished their hiring process for the year. And so I ended up going over to Smith Hall, because I was like, well, that's a museum. It's a big museum on campus. So I'll go talk to them. And when I talked to them, they were like, we might have something, but have you checked out the Gorgas House? And I didn't even know that the Gorgas House was open for tours at the time. I'm a freshman this year, so I just had no clue. And I hadn't been on that side of campus too much. And so when I found out that they were potentially doing stuff, I walked over there and came in, and there was an active tour going on. So I had to talk to one of the work study students about it. And I came back later and talked to you, Mr. Thompson, tried to figure it all out. There was a little bit of chaos with the work study people because my FAFSA had gotten all confused and they didn't know if I was actually eligible or not. But I was so excited by what the Gorgas House was when I went in and I saw how, I guess, intimate of a space it was and how it was truly a living home that we were just kind of moving around and sharing with people. That I was like, I mean, I have to get involved in this. So I kept hounding the financial aid office until they let me figure it all out. And I'm glad it worked out because I really, really enjoy working there. It's one of the highlights of my college career so far.
Well, that's really good to hear. Appreciate it, and I appreciate you sticking through it. I know financial aid and FAFSA and all that can be a headache. I know it's not always that easy, but no, we're really happy you're part of the team. And some of the things that you mentioned, we've heard before. I didn't even know I could go in there. What is this place? And that's something we're working on changing. And having student engagement, like we're currently doing right now, was one way to change all that, to show that. To really create meaning in the space so that students can come in and really create the meaning that they want to see in the space. We have histories and we have narratives that we tell people so we can share those histories and those stories, but how we all individually engage with it varies, and how we understand and make meaning of those spaces varies. And I think it really shows the strength of the place, but also the strength of all of y'all's research interest on how you can really create it yourself. All right, guys, so it looks like we got a comment. I'm going to read it off real quick from Cameron. Thank you guys for all that you do to keep our campus culture and history alive. My daughter and I are Gorgas regulars, and each time we experience something new. Well, thank you, Cameron. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
The Gorgas House has a fantastic history. We're really, and I say this in all the tours whenever people come in, is that we're the only place on campus where you can come and get a window, a view into the entire history of campus. It's the oldest building from its inception to antebellum period, participation in slavery, the Civil War, Reconstruction, industrialization, all the way through the civil rights era, and even in today. So we have a role and we have a voice to say in all those different types of histories. And each time we experience something new, that's great. That really warms my heart, because we all actively try and improve on the research and the histories that we can talk about. It isn't static, and we're always doing more work. We can always find out something new. So I wish Camilla was on here. We could kind of talk to her and get all the rich research that she does. But Camilla, if you're watching, we appreciate it. So Cameron, thank you so much. We appreciate that. So yeah, come by whenever we're open back up, and we'll let everybody know when that is. But I'm sure you'll see something new as well. All right, so we're going to move on to the next question. All right, so Adrian, what has been or what are your favorite experiences in the museum? Does one moment stand out for you above any of the others?
So my favorite experiences within the museum have been the experiences that you wouldn't expect to get in the museum. Working with the Gorgas House Museum has not only allowed me to be a tour guide for as Ivy said, a living museum, but I've also worked with several events and been able to meet so many different people, like whether that's professors from around the world, students from around the world, or just alumni and other students coming in to see, even deans. Just being able to meet all these different people and share this history with them, I think is one of the really amazing experiences that you don't expect when you first come in to work at the Gorgas House.
Well, that's wonderful. Okay, so there's two things I want to talk about based on that. Yes, the Gorgas House, we host events. We do receptions and tailgates, different, even weddings occasionally. And those those events provide us an opportunity to talk about the histories of the home that otherwise people would not have been interested in. Yeah, it's this beautiful building and it has a great architecture and it's a stately place that provides a beautiful vista. We also have all these histories we can talk about, and that provides us an opportunity to do that. So it really is a sharing of the history. And I had another point, and I can't remember what it was. So I'm going to try and come back to it if I can. But yeah, that's fantastic. All right. Oh, now I remember. So what was something you expected that differed? So you said you didn't know what to really expect. What did you expect to experience when you came in?
Honestly, I wasn't sure what I expected. When I first came in, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a tour guide. I'm just going to be giving tours. But even when I say that, and as I was thinking it back then, how you visualize a tour guide, you're usually on the other side. You're not usually given the tours. You're usually the one receiving it. So it's hard to even think about, oh, what am I going to be doing as a tour guide?
Yeah, that's great. We have experiences, we have preconceptions of what these historic spaces or museums might be, but something that we're working really hard on, and I congratulate all of you for doing, is really making it a living space. Now, this cold old building on campus, but really something that's alive and vibrant part of the campus community, and that's all thanks to y'all's work. I appreciate everything y'all have all done. All right, so Michaela, we're going to jump over to you. What has been or what are your favorite experiences in the museum? Does one moment stand out for you?
So it's not just one moment, but like Adrian said, it is the events that we do, more specifically the Halloween and Christmas parties that we have.
Okay.
They are probably my favorite moments, just because it is fun to do that community outreach. And I can also now put down event planning on my resume.
Yeah, we offer a few skill building exercises and resume and CV building opportunities. So if anyone watching is interested, reach out to me. We'll see what we can do and work on that kind of stuff. But yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. But yes, not only do we do private events for people to actually rent out the space, we do public events that we open up for the community. And the two that Michaela mentioned is the Halloween haunting and our holiday open house, where we dress up in different Victorian dress costumes. It's a little spookier for the Halloween event, and that's usually the last week of October, where we do a haunted tour. The theater department lights everything up for us. We have a fun experience. So check out our Facebook pages and Instagram pages if you want to see some images from the Halloween haunting and the holiday open house. I really enjoy the hot chocolate during a holiday open house. That's always a fun experience. All right, Rachel. So what has been or what are your favorite experiences in the museum? Does one moment stand out for you?
I really love just the culture overall. Like, we've all gotten really close, and throughout the school year, we're always going somewhere, just doing things outside the museum, and it's really become kind of like a family. And that's just great to me that, that I guess we all have this common interest, and that's enabled us to go out and find these other things that we can get involved in. And yeah, I just love the culture.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's awesome. Yeah, we create meaning in these spaces, but because we have all these shared interests, we really do become a tight-knit family. And I have enjoyed watching y'all, going to the Gorgas connection down in Greensboro, seeing Amelia's birthplace and whatnot. That's been a lot of fun watching y'all go and do that and seeing that organize and come together. And even visit places like the Pi Lab. So it's really taking these historic connections and making life outside of the spaces as well. So yeah, that's perfect. That's fantastic. Thanks so much. So Morgan, moving on to you. You've been here for a semester. So what has been or what are your favorite experiences in the museum? Does one stand out for you?
So kind of like jumping on like what Rachel said, like it's been really great getting to know everyone there and how like not only like the friendships, but just like them helping me learn more about the house. Because I have the student manual, obviously, but there might be like some things like, the ghost experiences or whatever that we always talk about, or like how we went up into the attic to see the original windows and like the crazy stairs. And so it's always interesting to learn not only like the history from like the manual, but from like people who have given tours and have like actually been around the house for a while and giving like that insight into it. I liked the attic. That moment was just really good. Because I find windows fascinating in old homes. Like Nottoway has a door and window for every day of the year. And that's the one fact I remember from the tour. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, so when people come in to tour the home, they might have this almost like a surface level experience where they're really just engaging with it how we kind of dictated it to them. We're trying to work on past that. But yeah, once you start volunteering and working in these spaces, you get to have these shared experiences with everybody and really see the bones of the building, like you said, and have those little individual experiences. So I'm glad you enjoyed the attic. I can't even stand up there, but I do enjoy going up there occasionally. It's nice and warm. But yeah, maybe there's some possibility for some future work up there. So that's pretty fun. All right, Ivy. So what has been, or what are your favorite experiences in the museum? Does one moment stand out for you?
So right before everything kind of shut down, I gave this tour to, I believe he was an architect, and he was super interested in the house. Yeah, he was like,
I remember.
Yeah, best. You always love it when you give a tour to somebody who's super intrigued, and you love it even more when they're able to teach you things. And he was absolutely willing and happy to do that. He was just going off about everything that we passed, and I loved that. But one thing in particular that happened that kind of during that tour that I just it was so exciting. He was telling me about the bricks and what the way that the bricks out on the porch of the Gorgas house, what they mean and why they look the way they do. And while he was doing that, we realized that there was a name in cursive or something written on one of the bricks right next to the door, and it was very, very faint. But it looked like it was saying Gorgas, potentially Amelia Gorgas. I remember it as a woman's first name. But it was just a little name written in like this very old looking cursive right there. And I hadn't heard about it. It wasn't in the Docent Manual or anything like that. And so once the tour was over, I went and I told you, Mr. Thompson, about it. And you said that you didn't have any record of it either. And so I don't know if any research has been done to that yet, but it was exciting to see, this is probably just another, old little relic of the house potentially, because it didn't really look like it was a new add-on from like a construction worker at some point. And so I think that's what's so cool about the house. You were talking about how, the Docent Manual is not this stagnant thing. It's always changing. And the house itself, there's more to be discovered there. I mean, we have that new exhibit happening in the post office right now with a lot of things that have been found around the house. And so that's something that I really, really appreciate about the Gorgas house. And one memory in particular that kind of exemplified that for me, how there's always more to figure out about it.
That's a fantastic point. And I remember that individual. I remember him coming in. And I think he even came back later to ask more questions. But yeah, so like our tours can last 10 minutes if a student just has a quick assignment to run in and out, or our tours can last 2 hours if somebody really wants to dig deep into it. And a lot of times when we're engaging with the public and our visitors, we learn things about the house we otherwise wouldn't have. Like architecture is a great point. I've learned things about the furniture. Even doing these like social distance or even social media postings, the names that we have in the little desk in the museum room. I actually know whose one of those signatures is now. And he was a former soldier. And yeah, so I had to do more research on him. One of our readers on Facebook pointed it out to me. And thank you. I can't remember your name right now. But yeah, we actually know whose name that is now. So we can actually start incorporating this information that we get from the public into our museum tours and experiences to share that with everyone else. So it really is a public space engaging with public history. And we had Dr. Brock on last week and had the opportunity to talk about that. But yes, I showed that signature to Camilla, and she and I are starting to kind of dig into it a little bit more to kind of find out.
So the tours where you can actually have more of a conversation, because you give a different tour to when like adults come in, so like when students come in. And so to have more like the conversation of, oh, you like art or like you like literature, then like we can pull more of like those aspects for the house and like focus on how Amelia was the librarian, like that. So when it's more of a conversation almost, like I think those are like the best tours to like give to the public.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. When people can find a specific interest in the home or some type of their background interest, it makes the tour experience a lot, for lack of a better word, more fun, because it's a new way to engage with them. And, I can't tell you how many times I've had a musician come into the home and sit down and play the piano or actually read the sheet music that we have down in there. We actually learn more about it. So yeah, I mean, that's absolutely perfect. Okay, so we've got a comment from Lynette Zeist. Lynette, it's great hearing from you. Lynette is the historian and manager of the Oubre House down at the University of Adelaide in Adelaide, Australia. And she and I have been working on a video series going back and forth talking about our different spaces. So I'm going to read her comment real quick. Lynette, it's great to hear from you. Great to hear the enthusiasm and insights of your student volunteers, learning much more about the workings of your museum. Lynette from the Oubre House Historic Precinct. Thanks, Lynette. It's great to hear from you. And I'm working on the video. I'll try and get it to you in the next couple of days. I encourage anybody to check out the Oubre House's social media pages, but also their website. It's a beautiful structure, and it dwarfs the Gorgas House in terms of its size and its space. So I encourage everybody to go and check out it. It's a beautiful space.
I actually, I saw on the social media when you guys were doing that conversation back and forth, their Instagram, and I went and I checked it out, and I just wanted to commend, what did you say her name was? Her name's gone away now from the screen. Lynette. Yeah, commend Lynette and all the people there, because it really is a gorgeous house, and you're right, it's huge. It's incredible just how big it is. Yeah,
yeah, it's huge. They have beautiful gardens. They have sensory gardens for people to come in and look, and it's kind of given me some ideas for things we can expand on, and kind of doing all these kind of cross-cultural and even international conversations can really share our experiences and kind of build on how we want to offer things. So yeah, this is going great. I'm having a lot of fun. All right, we're gonna move on to our next question real quick. All right, so Adrian, so what are some of the challenges to working or volunteering in a museum?
So the challenge that I come across, and I know that everyone else in this chat comes across as well, is that because we are all students, because we're all constantly studying and have our own things to really focus on, it's hard to remember everything that we see in the manual or everything about the museum. And sometimes it can be a little frustrating when we do have someone come in and we feel that we cannot give the answer that we feel we all should know. But what's also really good about that is we have you, Mr. Thompson, because you're always in the back, and we can always come to you and ask you if we have a question, or if there's a certain artifact that someone really is interested about and we wish that we had more information on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the challenge of many museum spaces, and this one kind of lends itself to that, is that there's always more to know. And I've said this before, and I'll say it 1,000 more times. I am totally okay saying I don't know. I think that's the best place to start. I get a question, I say, I don't know. Give me your email address, and I'll look it up for you, and I'll try and give you as much information as we can. Because, we're always finding out more. There's always more to learn. But yeah, that's definitely a challenge. Michaela, I'm going to direct the question to you. What are some of the challenges you face as being a student in the museum system?
Let's see. I guess, well, for me personally, whenever we get large groups into the house, having to divide up that workload when there's only like 2 of us in the house at a time, though just the chaos that happens some moments can be kind of difficult, because you're trying to either eat lunch or you're trying to do your homework, but then you're like, wait a second, I'm an employee. I have to go run and do this. So definitely being pulled in different directions is kind of hard at times.
Yeah, I get that, because y'all all have like multiple identities you're dealing with, and multiple responsibilities. Not only are you work studies, you're also students, and you're also trying to maintain and manage lots of different responsibilities. And we try to be as understanding about that as possible. When we have our large tour groups coming in the fall, especially like the business introductory classes that come in, and we're happy to have them come in. There's around 1,600 of them that come in over the course of that semester. Yeah, we have to actually come up with strategies to how do we mitigate and actually compact our tour to really save our voices, but to get them the information they need coming in and out. I think I've lost my voice at least 2 or 3 times every week that those groups come in. But yeah, that is definitely a challenge. Rachel, what about you? What are some of the challenges that you've experienced?
I guess piggybacking off of Adrian just a little bit, we have stretches where we don't have as many tours, and a lot of the times I've noticed during those stretches I tend to forget the things that I thought I knew really, really well. And then that's so sad for me. It happened earlier this semester. I had somebody come in after I'd gone probably 2 months without having a tour, and he was really, really interested, and I just completely blanked multiple times, and I don't know, I just felt so bad about that.
Well, I mean, it's you don't need to feel bad. It is definitely a repetition thing. I've come in over the holiday break from December and January and completely forgotten like my introductory speech that I give for like the first 10 or 50 minutes. I'm like, who is this person on the wall that I'm pointing my finger to right now? Let me cheat over there and actually look at it real quick. I mean, that's happened. That occurs with anything, no matter what it happens to be, whether it be a tour, whether it be writing a paper, it could be anything. And it's really repetition, keeping those things fresh. But yeah, I've experienced the exact same thing. So you're not alone in that. Morgan, what about you? What are some of the challenges you faced?
So it kind of goes with like personality wise, I'm kind of shy. Like I'm not the most outgoing person. So when someone comes in and I'm giving the tour, sometimes like when I do forget something like Rachel and Adrian were saying, then I'll get like insecure and be like, oh my God, what if this is a bad tour? What if I'm not doing like, what if they're not happy with it? And so then it just makes that like anxiety worse. But as you said, like the more repetitions I do, the more it gets better and the more I'm like starting to actually remember and not having to rely on the manual as much. Mm-hmm. But then like sometimes when a student comes in, I'm like, ooh, we've had a class together. I know we've had a class together. And so like the one time this girl came in, she's like, we did homework together. And I was like, when? I was like, what happened? So that was awkward. But yeah, it's just like interacting with people and like it's almost like presenting. So it's sometimes I struggle with that, but it's getting better. So it's a work in progress, I guess.
I mean, that's a totally valid thing to say. Really being a docent and engaging with people coming in that you do, it really is a public speaking exercise. It is a public speaking engagement, and it's giving you all experience in how to do that. You know, for the first 6 weeks of working at the Gorgas House, I had the manual in my hands the entire time, and I worked really hard not to just throw it in front of my face, kind of hide behind it. But yeah, like you said, it's repetition. Then the other thing I'll say, kind of going off on a tangent of what you just talked about, is people coming in that when I speak to a student coming in for a tour, it means something different than when y'all speak to a student coming in. You know, by and large, because we're in the middle of campus, the majority of people coming in are students. They're part of our campus community. So y'all really act as really peer-to-peer agents talking to students coming in, and it's really a more welcoming face. It's more of a way that they can relate to the space, and it makes it more personable. So it really speaks to the strength of y'all being in the home and really giving it life and enthusiasm the way you have. And I can't commend all of you enough for it. All right, Ivy, going to finish up that question with you. What are some of the challenges you faced?
Well, aside from, the tour giving, talking too loud, talking too fast, that kind of thing.
That's just a pitch issue. That's fine.
Yeah. I have kind of, it's not necessarily like a personal struggle, but more of a museum struggle that I empathize with and that kind of concerns me and that I want to work with. But it's just, getting the word out there, telling people that it's open, because like myself, I said I didn't know it was open for tours originally. And I don't think that's any fault of the Gorgas House necessarily, as much as it is just a museum on a college campus, especially a huge college campus like Alabama. It's really easy for those types of things to get lost or get, people pass by them and they're like, oh, well, that's cool, but I've got to go to class, or I've got to go to this club meeting, or I've got to do this. And they're like, well, I'll go back later. And then they never really do. And I don't fault those people for it either, because it's completely understandable. But I guess I do a lot of thinking of how can we get more people to come here? Because it seems kind of like this brick wall of like, well, I mean, we have social media, we do the advertising, but it can still be difficult. And so I think that's the biggest challenge for me as a part of this museum, as a part of like, I have a responsibility to keep it progressing, keep it getting bigger, getting better. That I want to brainstorm more about, ways that we can bridge this gap between, the museum culture of the campus and the actual student body.
Yeah, those are some great points. And a couple of things I'll kind of piggyback off on that. Being on the middle of university campus has its benefits and its detractions, because campus is always expanding and parking access is getting more and more limited as campus gets larger and everybody gets pushed further out. It's more difficult for us to engage with the public community as opposed to the campus community. So a lot of our efforts focus on students, faculty, staff. How do we engage with these people and really bring them into the space and let them make meaning out of it? So one way we're trying to do that is with department collaborations and engagements. We're trying to engage with, we do work with the Department of Theater, Art History, Research and Collections, Biology, Anthropology, Museum Studies. There are ways to to do these collaborations. And those are some things that we're trying to work on. And any of the brainstorming opportunities that y'all have, please throw at me and we can work on it. We can definitely try and do that. I mean, it's really trying to kind of expand on these department collaborations, but it is a challenge. It is a challenge trying to engage people. You know, students on campus, you're busy, you're working, you're going to class, you have a limited amount of time. So how do we provide opportunities for students to engage in this public space? Because it is a cultural resource, it belongs to everyone. And students are definitely part of the community that actually engages with it, and probably engages with it more than anyone else. All right, we're going to move on to our next question. This is great. I feel like I could talk about this for weeks because I've got a lot more questions, but we're gonna do our best. All right, so Adrian, gonna move on to you. So after graduation, if you don't pursue a career in history or museums or a related field, how do you think working in a museum will benefit you?
So working in a museum will benefit me in lots of ways. I use the Gorgas House in my resume tons and tons, and I have all my skills listed up under it. But some skills that I could at least focus on would definitely be the communication aspect. When you are working at the Gorgas House Museum, you're always talking to people, whether that be people that you're giving tours to or other staff that are involved with UA museums. And just to add on with that, the tour aspect as well. If you ever thinking about doing political science or majoring or minoring in public policy, my minor is public policy, and you ever think about interning in the Capitol or other places that where interns usually give tours, having this experience giving tours is also really beneficial as well.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, being able to speak and be able to talk to anyone, even if it's for 3 minutes about any topic, is a priceless skill. And I mean, that's something that museums really offer themselves to something. So yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. All right, Michaela, moving on to you. If you don't, after graduation, don't pursue a career in history or museums or related field, how do you think working at the Gorgas House was going to benefit you?
So I'm a theater major. So with piggybacking off of what Adrian said, having awesome communication skills, being able to plan events and community outreach, that has allowed me to kind of build some bridges with people. And I think I can definitely take that with me in film production and stage management and all of these other career fields that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. That's exactly. And I think because we have a space to do some
Yes.
collaborative work, like we talked about in the previous question, we've had theater groups come over and use the space for different performances and different rehearsals. So yeah, there are ways to bridge these gaps. There are ways to collaborate with all these different people, because I think this public speaking aspect of it, this public history aspect of it, lends itself to many different fields. So Rachel, going to move on to you. If you don't continue on this kind of career, how do you think it would have benefited you in the future?
Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a public relations major, so definitely the public speaking aspect's helping me as well. It's still kind of up in the air whether I do like public relations related to history or more like my concentration, sport and entertainment management. So I'm still kind of waffling, but it's definitely helped me kind of think more about what I want to do in the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what I would say is that you still have time. Yeah, you don't have to make that decision today. I know I changed my major at least once, and I'm working my PhD now on a different field entirely than what my undergraduate route was originally in. So yeah, there's time to be flexible, and the space really allows itself to really be reflective and really think about what you want to do with the skills you're developing. So Morgan, gonna move on to you. If you don't continue to pursue work or go into a museum or related field, how do you think working at the Gorgas House is going to benefit you?
So obviously, like the tours itself and like the public speaking, as like Adrian and Rachel said, helps like almost presenting and gets me more comfortable with it. Then another thing is, I feel like if you're interested in history or if you're a history major or like working at the museum, you get really detail oriented and like like the small things of the house that other people might not notice, like ivy in the brick or like the archaeological things that we've dug up and we can mention. And so like all those details as an engineering student, obviously details are extremely important because it can cost millions of dollars on a project. So I think it helps me be able to like know more details and have like a fuller picture and know how that can benefit a project and not just focusing on the big like aspects of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So not only is the public speaking aspect of it, it's also the research aspect, being able to manage information, how do you present that information, and really pay attention to the details. And I can imagine being an engineer, yeah, you probably want to make sure you measured everything exactly properly before you start putting some load bearing stuff on some things. So yeah, great points. All right, Ivy, we'll finish up that question with your comments.
Okay, yeah. So I do want to continue working in museums, but regardless, the working at the Gorgas House or experience at the Gorgas House, it provides an endless list of resume things. Of course, like everybody's mentioned, communication, working without supervision, respect for the space, all of these things. But something especially valuable that I've gotten out of working at the Gorgas House, and I think it's very timely for the era that we're in. There's a lot of discussion going on, especially right now, about how do we recontextualize America's past, because there's plenty of problematic things of America's past, plenty of things that have been, oppression, all of these things that have happened, and there are still, there's remnants of that. It has lasting effects on people, but it also has lasting effects on the infrastructure of, the country itself. And we have monuments or things like that people are talking about and trying to figure out what do we do? Do we erase them? Do we take them away? Do we put them in a museum? What do we do? Do we just ignore it? And the Gorgas House, while it doesn't have like a monument or too much, of that kind of thing, it is a part of the history. And so it does have ties to everything going on. And you, Mr. Thompson, and I think the rest of the people at the Gorgas House have done a lot to not ignore that and to make it, incorporated into the Docent Manual, but then also incorporated into the home itself, and make sure that that's a constant work in progress, I guess. There's always research being done, it seems. We're always trying to figure that out better, because we don't have all the answers. I don't think a lot of people do have the answers right now, but the Gorgas House tries really hard to figure it out and to not slide it under the rug or simplify it or anything like that. And that, while maybe not a resume thing necessarily, I think is a very valuable takeaway. Definitely if you want to stay in the South, but I think just in America and the world in general, figuring out, what you think about how to deal with these historical issues has definitely been very valuable for me.
Well, I appreciate that. And what I would say is that the Gorgas House, because of its history and participation in slavery, we know the enslaved people worked there, and the history of the institution, is that we provide a space for those conversations. And because it is a cultural resource and it belongs to everyone can make meaning and interpret the space their own way. But, that said, I still appreciate the opportunity that the Gorgas House presents for us to have those conversations and further our social cultural, social political conversation dialogue about these historical issues in terms of who we are, where we're going, and how do we deal with it. And we really provide that space. And I hope we're doing good work, and I want us to continue to do good work and really present this information and make sure those who have been historically underprivileged and marginalized have an opportunity to really talk about those histories, because they haven't been talked about in the past. And what does that mean for us? And that's something we're still actively working on. So yeah, great point, fantastic point. We have about 12 minutes left, and I think I could talk about this for, 30 more days, but I'm going to try and get a few more questions, and we'll see what we can do for finishing up. So guys, Catherine proposed this question. I want to see what y'all's feedback is. So we'll start with Adrian. As a student, what advice would you give to other students who are interested in history or museums?
Honestly, the best advice I would just say is just get involved. Like how I started out, I would have never gotten involved unless Michaela had asked, and that's really all it takes. The University of Alabama in particular, its museum system is very accommodating to students. So if you're wanting to get involved here at the University of Alabama, all it takes is to go to one of the museums and ask for the director and say, hey, I want to get involved here. But other than that, just find out where your local history living space is and just ask around, see what you can do.
Yeah, that's great advice. And every single director, everybody who works in the museum or even in research collections, if you want to get involved, we'll find a way to get you involved. If you're really interested and you love the field, we'll get you involved. And every single one of us, I know if you emailed us or called and asked us the question, we would take the time to answer it, because we love history as much as anyone, and we love natural history and all the natural sciences. So yeah, ask us. That's fantastic advice. So Michaela, going to jump over to you real quick. So as a student, what advice would you give to other students who are interested in histories or museums?
Do it. Go for it. Ask questions, do research, and get involved. So almost exactly the same thing Adrian said.
Yeah, it's solid advice. It's
Yes.
not a bad thing to repeat. So yeah, once again, that's great. Rachel, what about you? What's some advice you would give to other students who are interested in histories or museums?
Even if you're not really interested in getting straight up involved, like giving tours, or if you just want to go see a place, definitely come see it. Somebody mentioned earlier, we get people that say, especially in the spring with the graduating seniors, that they've walked by for 4 years and they've always wanted to come in. They just didn't really, they just never got around to it, and they really wish they had. So definitely, I mean, for me, it makes my day when people come in and they want to take a tour. And so we'd love to see you in the future.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, exactly. Stop by, come by anytime, and we'll find a way to get you involved. And it can really be on what your interest level is. If you're not specifically interested in history or museums, there's a way to develop skills or develop other aspects that can help you in your future endeavors. So yeah, stop by anytime. Morgan, what about you? As a student, what advice would you give other students who are interested?
I would say to never stop learning and never stop like expanding your knowledge, because if you're interested in it, like as Michaela says, just do it, like buy into that passion and that like interest. Like I remember a quote that I was told in high school: the mind is like a parachute, it doesn't work unless it's open. So be open to that knowledge and like go to museums. If you want to do that every Saturday, look at museums online and like go to them, or do like, I know I've been doing virtual museum tours of like the Louvre and like other big places that have them online, where like we can't obviously go to them right now, but like if that's your passion, like really buy into it and like always keep, I guess, pursuing that.
Yeah, don't give up. I know things are hard right now, but there are ways to engage with museums and historic spaces. And if it's not with a virtual museum or virtual tour, check out our websites, or shoot us an email for smaller institutions or smaller organizations. We're happy to talk to you and engage with you in some way. Check our social media platforms, among a few other things. There's ways to talk to us and whatnot. So yeah, that's fantastic. Go after, pursue it. And Ivy, what about you? What advice would you give other students who are interested?
Yeah, I think definitely lots of good advice has been given. And I think that a big thing is, I've always been privileged in having museums around me at some point, but I don't know if that's true for everyone. And I think the COVID stuff right now has brought the benefits of, our virtual access out and really highlighted those. And I think that, Morgan highlighted on that a little bit. I think that if you don't have a museum around, if you really, you just don't have the option, there's nowhere near you, reach out, email the people at the museum that you're interested in, whether that be the Gorgas House or whatever. See if because I don't know if we're necessarily talking to just university people, but if you don't have access to that, shoot people emails. See if you can do maybe some research on your own. Just figure out what they're looking at right now. See if you can help out and do research for them. But then if you're working in a museum, because we haven't really given any advice to people who are like actually starting to work there, memorize the Docent Manual, memorize like everything, because it's the worst thing to have a tour come in. And Rachel talked about this, and be excited, especially if it's a new job, you're excited, you want to like work on this, and then suddenly you realize like you have no clue like how to answer any of the questions at all. You don't know, like, you keep forgetting things, and it sucks. It's not like you don't need to feel like I don't know, bad about it. It's fine, but just try to like really memorize it ahead of time so that you don't run into that, because that sucks so bad.
Yeah, and that's the best place to start. It is like like you said, for anybody who's interested, get involved, study the history, always do it, always be repetitive about it. Once again, it's okay to say I don't know.
Yeah.
And I've had visiting professors from other countries come in and ask me a question, and I have no idea how to start to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I can guess, I can make something up, but I don't want to be disingenuous. So I don't know. Give me your business card. I'll email you with some information. But yeah, it happens. It happens, and that's an okay place to be. All right, guys. I think I've got one more question. Got time for one more, so I'll ask this real quick, and then we'll start finishing up. So starting with Adrian, have you learned anything interesting that you didn't know before? And it can
Oh,
be about the
man.
museum, it can be about history, it can be about public engagement. What's one thing that you've learned that you didn't know before?
There's honestly so much, but if I had to focus on, I suppose, one of one of the few things that I didn't know before was, I guess, about the history of the museum, particularly relating to African Americans and the slaves that used to work at the museum as well. Just being able to learn their names, whether that's through projects through other professors, such as Professor Green, or just reading books about the museum, learning that and understanding the history and how that's intertwined with not only the museum, but the campus itself has been really enlightening to me.
Yeah, that's a great point. And not only is there always more to know, but there's stories that we should be telling that haven't been told in the past. And Ivy kind of touched on this earlier. We provide a platform to talk about these histories. And it's not necessarily a platform as much as it is a space to hold these conversations and explore these histories. So yeah, that's a great point. That's really great. Michaela, moving on to you. What's one thing you've learned that is interesting that you didn't know before? And it can be about anything, museum related, Gorgas related, anything.
Oh goodness. So definitely gonna embarrass myself for a second,
Go
but
for it.
learning proper, I guess, table placement and how to put tablecloths onto the tables and how to plan food, how to just event planning in general, but more putting the tables together, making sure that like the tablecloths are put the correct way, and yeah.
That's an undervalued point you just made, because for all the events that we have, everything has to look just right. Not only are we concerned about visitors having a good experience, we have to be cognizant and aware of the items that we have in the historic space. Some of these things are hundreds of years old, and we have to be aware of it. So we're not only protecting the items, we're also putting our best foot forward for anybody who might be coming in, visiting professors, dignitaries. So yeah, those cloths have to look perfect, the table has to look perfect, food has to be just great. So yeah, that all goes into it. Really undervalued point you just made, Michaela. I'm really proud of you. That's great. All right. So, Rachel, what about you? What's one thing that you've learned that's interesting? And it can, once again, it can be about anything museum or history related.
Just how many uses the Gorgas House has had over history. I mean, it was a house, obviously, but it was also, there's a post office, it was a hospital, and just learning how big of an impact it had on the campus community, and just we get to be involved in telling those stories, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's the opportunity to provide histories for so many parts of the last 200 years, perhaps even beyond that. Once again, the home has been interpreted one way, and that's fine. That's really the way that it's known. But there are all these other decades that we can really talk about. The Gorgas family started inhabiting the home in 1879, and they were there until 1953. So we've got this 50-year period of history before that we can talk about, and really this 70-something year period of history afterwards that we also have the opportunity to talk about. So yeah, awesome. That's a great point. Morgan, what about you? What's one thing you've learned interesting about the space, about history, about working in museums in general?
Okay. I learned a lot because being from Louisiana, I knew nothing of like specific Alabama history. And so learning about the Gorgas House and Gorgas, but then also the Gale family and how Amelia is related to them, I've definitely fallen down a rabbit hole on Wikipedia about this. So that's always interesting. But then I also think it's interesting because I know Louisiana history and now I know Alabama history, and both being in the deep South, like the cultures there are just so different. Like a lot of things are the same, then being able to like compare contrasts, like I'm gonna be honest, like it's more conservative in Alabama than like Louisiana. You know, we have Mardi Gras, we have Bourbon Street, we have all this like more French style, and Alabama's more English, and so it's just interesting to learn and like compare and contrast like the two different southern states.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Even within the region, especially if you get outside of it, German and Spanish as well, you can really think, I guess if you're looking at the region from the outside, it's like, oh, there's southernness or more like monoculture, monolithic culture. When you actually start diving deep into its histories and how everything comes to look, you really get this rich experience of all these different historical, I guess, motivations for how things have come to be. So yeah, that's a fantastic point. And I would include, that's very funny. That's a great point. All right, so Ivy, I'm going to finish up with you. So what's something interesting that you've learned that you didn't know beforehand, before we got started?
So it's actually very specific. There's wardrobes all over the Gorgas house. And on my first tour that Mr. Thompson gave me when I first started working there, I found out that the reason for that, and the reason that there are lots of wardrobes in a lot of old houses, is because there was a tax on how many rooms a house had. And so if your house had a lot of, or not a lot of rooms, a lot of rooms. If your house had a lot of rooms and also a lot of closets, those closets counted as rooms. And so they would tax you on those closets. And so if you had any say-so in how your house was built, you would build it without any closets, so that those closets didn't count as extra rooms. And that was just like, that's always stuck with me. And I always say that on all the tours, because I just think that's so interesting that people would count a closet as a room and also tax people on it. I love that little fact.
Oh yeah. But we're full of interesting little tidbits. You start looking at the physical spaces around you, like, why does everything exist the way it currently does? Why was it built? Why was it made this way? And there are all these old laws or rules that we don't think about anymore that have gone by the wayside. Yeah, but that's a perfect one. Yeah, that's an actually perfect one. All right, guys. So. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up. It's been fantastic. It's been a lot of fun. Rebecca's going to take me out, and then Rebecca will come back in to kind of close up and everything. But guys, once again, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure, but it's great meeting everybody and talking to everybody again. And maybe we can turn this into a podcast, a separate thing, because this has been a lot of fun.
I would love that.
Let's do it.
All right, we'll gauge some interest. We'll talk to Rebecca, and maybe we can get that started to get everybody on board. But once again, thanks, guys, and I'll talk to everybody soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
It's been fun.
A podcast is definitely doable, so we will work on that in the near future. So you all were such a lot of fun to listen to, and thank you for what you do at the Gorgas House Museum and for what you do for UA museums, because you are the faces of the Gorgas House Museum. So thank you for sharing your experience today. Well, I think that's going to do it for this Museums from Your Home live stream. We'll be doing this every weekday, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. And each day will feature a different aspect of UA museums. Tomorrow, we're going to be going back on the Alabama Indigenous Mound Trail. So come back and join us over at the Office of Archaeological Research and Moundville Archaeological Park's Facebook pages, as well as the UA Museum's YouTube channel, which if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll never miss a live stream. So you can do that. I'll pop up the address here. You can go to youtube.com/UA museums. And if you subscribe, it will always alert you to the live stream. So you'll never miss any of our video content there. If you are interested in the full live stream schedule of what we're doing here with Museums from Your Home, you can go to museums.ua.edu/museums from your home. That has the live stream schedule. That also has some online educational resources that we have from Discovering Alabama, from the Alabama Museum of Natural History, and also from Moundville Archaeological Park. So you can go to that site, and that'll be your one-stop shop for everything that we're doing. If you are interested in supporting what we're doing here, you can do that at give.ua.edu/museums, and that will help us out there. And I guess that will take us out. So thank you to everyone on the panel today for sharing your knowledge with us and your experiences and all the laughs that you all have. I always enjoy it, just on a personal note, going over to the Gorgas House Museum and seeing you all there. So hope to see you in the future. And thanks to everyone who was watching live with us today and everyone who will watch this later. And thank you for visiting UA Museums from Your Home. All right. Well, ladies, have a great day. And thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.